Hey everybody, thanks for being here. We're about a week and a half back from Lancaster, the Lancaster Classic, which we had an amazing time. I came home with a cold, and Julie did as well. And I wanted to spend some time preparing videos and making videos that I'd promised to do for people, and I just hadn't gotten to. So I'm going to be doing that today and over the next few days. That being said, this particular video is going to be making a newer and better wood arrow for Julie, who shot longbow. A lot of you know Julie. She has her own Instagram, which is Bow Meets Girl. I'll put it right here so you can see it. And what's interesting about this particular setup we had for Julie going into Lancaster was we did not have quite the right setup, either at Lancaster or before Lancaster. However, Julie did phenomenal. She shot a total of 424, um, putting her 18th overall out of the 72, I believe there were of you. So it was pretty dang good. And she finished fourth for women overall, which again, pretty good for having an actual first longbow, legitimized longbow competition at the Lancaster Classic. And so anyway, the point I was trying to make was the arrows we had set up for her prior to going to Lancaster were shorter and faster, and they were made for her to do the 3D team trials, which we never ended up going to. We had some issues around the house we had to take care of, and the going to the tournament kind of went by the wayside. The point was that the arrows we had made weren't quite working well enough for that single spot that we shoot at the tournament. This guy, she had to have a pretty decent gap, and they weren't quite centered. So last minute, I think about a week before the tournament, before leaving for Lancaster, I made up a new set of arrows. These were they were much longer than she had been shooting. Just for reference, here's one of the ones she was shooting for 3D, and then here's one of the ones she was shooting at Lancaster. These are about 3 inches longer, and they were significantly heavier. So what I did was I took some data, and I wrote down some stuff, and I did this for a reason, because we need to make a better arrow for her to shoot at this indoor spot. And you might be wondering, well, why am I doing it now, considering we have a whole entire year to go? And that's just it. We have a whole entire year, and we're still shooting inside. There's no more tournaments for her or me, even indoor. But because we're still technically shooting inside for practice, this would be a good time to really figure out the details of what kind of arrow would work ideally going into next year. Next year we're going to have a big stage in the longbow division, which is amazing. I'm so excited for that. I think it's going to be an absolute blast. Part one, and then part two, I'd like to get her up there. I think that would be kind of neat for her. Anyway, that being said, I whipped these arrows together, like I said, just about a week and a half, 2 weeks before we left for Lancaster. And I knew I had the right spine. These are a 48 spine, and they're probably, I want to say, 5 or 6 inches longer than she technically needs. But I needed that weak spine. I needed as much point on as she could get. Well, what turned out to happen was her center was pretty dead on. She didn't have to aim left or right to compensate for any weakness or stiffness in the spine. They were dead on. However, these are massively heavy. So again, back to my data, the average weight of these particular arrows are 164 grains. 564 grains, which is like a hunting weight arrow. Now, mind you, she's shooting 31 pounds on her fingers. So you can understand this is quite a quandary, right? So what I learned was she had to aim very high on the target And for reference, Julie was aiming right about here, so somewhere in between the white black line, and those arrows were diving into, hopefully the yellow, but into here, like they were just dropping. And if you watched her arrow, if you saw her, or I'm sure I have film of it somewhere, or I can make one, those arrows were, I mean, big time arcing in. So it's not quite an ideal setup for her. The downside about these other ones, these shorter ones, was there was an enormous gap and it was low. So she was aiming low and slightly right to compensate for that up. And she said she would rather just stay in the middle and let them drop in. We tuned the bow that way. The arrows flew amazing, nice and straight, perfect. And her result was good. Again, a 424, it's a 212 half, 212, 212, and you can't complain about that. She had a great time. She loved being with all of you guys. She loves being part of the longbow community, of course, and just wants to grow in that direction as we lead up into 3D and next year's Lancaster Classic. Okay, so where we're at now is I have hundreds of wood arrows I've bought over the years. And in the recent this past year, I bought quite a few. I buy hunter grade. That technically means there's a lot of runoff in the grain. I can kind of go over that if you're not sure what that means. I can go over what runoff means. Um, so the hunter grade are not, they're not amazing. They're not premiums, which will have almost no runoff, maybe even less grain running through the wood. These particular arrows I have are from Sherwood. They are 35 to 40 spine, which is, I believe, going to be ideal because I kind of want to keep the same arrow length I made with these other ones I just showed you. But I definitely want a lighter point weight. So the point weight that on these particular arrows she was shooting are 145 grains. I want to cut about 200 to 250 grains of weight off of this particular arrow so she doesn't have such a major arc. You can imagine 250 grains is significant. Now, the downside, even though I have a pile of arrows, I don't necessarily have the exact correct weight, not necessarily spine, I mean actual mass weight or grain weight that we're going to need. Now, when I make this arrow for her, or what I'm suggesting you do for yourself, is you want to build an arrow, and you'll see I'll do this, that has as close to a point on at your 18 meters as you can possibly get. I'm not saying it has to be point on, it probably won't, but you want to have as close to it as you can. And just means as close to the yellow as you can while you're aiming. You don't want to have too much deviation. If you saw my personal longbow shooting video I put up about a month ago, shooting carbon arrows, that gap I was using was over 20 inches. I believe it was 21 inches, which is absolutely awful. So, but I will make an arrow that will be getting me closer to the middle to make that right. So when I shoot Lancaster next year, I don't have to gap too much. I will try to get that thing as close to dead center as I can. I highly recommend you do the same. And it takes a lot of work. It's going to take a significant amount of work. Hence, this is why we're a year out from doing this. It's not going to take a year, of course. It'll just take time. So what I happen to have here in front of me, I have 24. These are pretty much identical. They're both 35-40 in spine. They're hunter grade. The particular weight of these is 320 to 330. And I'm going to cut these to about 30 inches, roughly 30 inches, to get a little lighter arrow than what Julie was previously shooting. Okay, what that will be is roughly 10 grains per inch based on these. Again, doesn't mean it's correct. I'm just trying to figure it out. I will buy a premium set of the weight I specifically need to get that thing dialed in for her over the course of the year. Mind you guys, wood shafts are not expensive at all. I mean, compared to carbon and aluminum, they're they're quite cheap. And again, there's a massive variety. I just so happen to like Sherwood, Carson at Sherwood Shafts. I just happen to like this product. They're usually straight right out of the box. I don't have to straighten them much. And there's a good variety of weight I can ask Carson to try to find. Now, if you like Port Orford cedar, by all means, ash, you name the wood, it's pretty much you can make an arrow out of it. I might even go as far as getting some footed shafts from someone that makes a footed shaft for her. The downside about that, again, is we're moving more into heavier weights, which are not necessary for shooting 20 meter, excuse me, 18-meter targets or 20-yard targets. So that being said, what I'm going to do right now, I'll do it with you, is I'm going to put this, maybe time lapse might not work. I just might do a speed up, but I have 24 here. Again, also, these are not 11/30 seconds. These are 5/16. They're a little skinnier. This last setup, these were 11/30 seconds. And then what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to weigh every single one. So on here, it says, and they put on here, it says the diameter, the actual weight of this batch, and the spine. And again, these are 320 to 330. Is it 320 to 330? I don't know. I really don't know. So I'm going to sit here. I'm going to weigh every single one of these. I'm going to take my little pencil and write on the exact weight. I have my grain scale right here. I'm going to weigh every single one. And then I have a spine tester in the other room. I'm going to bring the camera in there. We're going to spine test every one of these and find to see exactly what spine they are. They might not be exactly what it says, which is 35/40. There's going to be a deviation there. It's kind of the risk you take when you buy a hunter grade shaft. Same with the weight. You don't know. But when it comes time to buying the exact thing I need and getting the exact thing I need, I will purchase an exact spine weight that I'm looking for and an exact mass weight that I'm looking for, and I'll buy a premium shaft. I'm not going to buy a hunter grade. I want very tight tolerances of weight. I mean, this is a tournament we're talking about. Could it mean winning or losing? Potentially, right? Sometimes it's more of the archer than the arrow. I think wood shafts are massively underrated. I think you can do a lot with a wood arrow and make it fly really well. I have hunter grades. I can shoot extremely well. So anyway, that being said, here's the deets. Let's get weighing. We'll start weighing these mass weight, and then we will put them on the spine chart or a spine scale, and we'll weigh the spine and see where they are. And then what we'll do, and I'll talk about this again later, I will take the closest tolerance of both weight and spine and make a batch with that. So I have an amazing, like a really tight batch. Believe it or not, when I sometimes will buy hundreds of hunter shafts, literally, you can buy them in hundreds. You save a little money that way. You sit there, you have to kind of sort through them, weigh them all. I weigh every single one, I put them all on the spine scale, and then I sort them so that I have weight matched and spine matched. I can get within, I'm going to be as bold as to say within 8 grains for a full set, which is really good. And then I can get within 2 spines of detail of that. So in other words, like if I want a 41 spine versus a 45 spine, I can find out of 100, pretty much I can find a nice batch of 41 spine and make sure I have the same exact spine and the same exact weight. And again, if you wanted to get them as premiums, you could probably just order it that way from Carson. Okay, so enough blah, blah, blah. I want to keep these videos shorter. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to weigh these and then scale, and then we'll probably cut the video there. All right, we'll see you in a second. Okay, guys, here we are. I turned off my light because it was putting a pretty big glare on the scale, and I wanted you to maybe be able to see it if it mattered to you. I don't know. So again, these are technically labeled identical. So I'm just gonna unbundle this whole entire thing, both sets of arrows, and I'm going to just mix them up and put them aside here, and because it's kind of irrelevant, right? If we assume they're the same, we'll just, it doesn't matter how we portion this out. And what I have, handy dandy pencil, easy peasy, and I'm just gonna literally drop and clear some stuff out here. Got stuff in the way, rubber bands and paper, blah blah blah. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is literally weigh each one of these out. When in a case like this, you see it says 322.2. All I do is just say 322, and take my handy dandy pencil, and I'm gonna write on the edge 322. It's kind of dark, but I can see it. That's all that matters. I write 322 in pencil on there, and we're going to toss it aside. Next one, you get the point of what I'm doing here. 318.3, so it's a 318. And again, I'll just write 318, and you get what I'm doing. Okay, guys, hopefully that went fast. I weighed every single arrow. There's 24 of them. And what I do, you saw me doing that. I weigh them. I take my pencil. I write what the number was, the actual mass weight, grain weight of each one. I write it down, and this is the literal list in order as I do it. And then what you can see here is you might see a dot next to one of those numbers, and that just simply means I have another arrow of that same grain weight. So I write the number down. If I come up with another 316, that's a dot, and another one, you get the point. So this is the exact order I weighed them in, and there's 24 there. And then what I do is I create another side, another list in actual order of light to heavy, and then I'll write the number of how many I have. So you can see that this original packaging list I got, it says there are 320 to 330. But when you look at my list, you'll see that I have the lightest one was 315, and the heaviest one was 326. So personally, if I were, and who knows, grains scale could have some deviation. I use this particular one. This is the one I weigh gunpowder with. I find it very accurate. I can calibrate it every single time, which I do. But who knows however they do it, wherever they do it, it's kind of irrelevant. But what I've found I'm actually happier with than it saying it was 320 to 330. They were on the lighter side. I would personally label this batch, these two batches I just got here, I would label them as 215 to 225. I'm sorry, 315 to 325, not 320 to 330. So then what I do is, anyway, I weigh these all out, and then I put them in order, and from lightest to heaviest, and then how many I have of each. You can see I have 1 of 315, 3 of 316, 4 of 317. You get the point here. I probably don't need to read this all out to you, but you get the idea of what I'm doing. And then what you can see here is, this is kind of cool. It worked out this way. You can see that there's 12 arrows, 12 here and 12 below, above the line and 12 below the line. And then the cool thing is that this batch from 315 to 320 is a full batch. It's only 5 in deviation, right? So in other words, the grain between 315 and 320 is 5. And then this second batch, I have 4 of 321, 4 of 322. You see how close that is. 1 of 323, 1 of 324, 1 of 325, 326. 21 to 26 is another 5 grain deviation. So this is actually really cool. Like this batch worked out great. So I can make 2 separate batches, and it's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to separate these batches based on their grain weight, so I know I have a deviation. I have 12 that are within 5 grains of each other, and another batch that are another 5 grains of each other. I'm not going to sit here and do that with you now. I'm just going to do it on my own, separate them, and then we're going to take it to the spine scale. And again, check the accuracy of this. This, like I said, I'm happier about. I'm looking to try to, like I said, drop this particular arrow that I made for her, drop it by 200 plus grains if I can. So this is significantly lighter. These will be maybe 9 grains per inch when these are all said and done, without a point weight on. Okay, so I'm going to sort these into the batches I like, and then I'm going to rubber band them, and then we're going to take it to the spine scale. Okay, guys, so I am at the spine tester. Obviously, this is an ACE spine tester. The ACE spine tester has pretty much been a standard um, in the industry for many, many, many years. I've had two. I've had the wall mount one, and then there's a big table mount one. Um, I've found that this particular one works just fine. Numbers, believe it or not, um, these things could be colors. It's kind of irrelevant. I mean, it's important to know what the number is, of course, but people get really hung up on the numbers. I just want it in that particular range, right? So, excuse me. Um, what we're looking at again is to make sure, so all the arrows are right here. What we're making sure of is I'm going to weigh every single arrow, and I want to make sure that they are falling within the spine that's on the card, so I know that they're exactly what they need to be. So I'm gonna for those of you who have never used one of these before, there's a particular way to put the arrow on the spine tester and check check it. And you can see maybe I'll get a better video. But the way the grain is, so you can see where the grain is the tightest. It's going to look like that on the other side. It's going to be pretty tight on one side. And let me see if I can't make the make that focus a little better. Maybe not. I'll just have to run a different video. And you can see where the grain is loose. Well, when you spine the arrow and when you build an arrow, you want the tightest grain portion on the side of the shelf. That's what you want. Um, Hitting the riser. You want the flattest part of the grain up and or down. There's also a case where we have runoff, and runoff is where, again, maybe I'll have to, you might be able to see this, maybe not, but you can see where the grain comes up and it actually runs off of the arrow shaft, and you can see it happening in both directions. And this is what really technically makes this a hunter grade shaft versus a premium shaft. You can see this one actually has a wave in it. And what that's really doing is it's creating an inconsistency in the spine. But again, these are not going to be the end result arrow anyway. This is just going to be a test pack, so to speak. We'll make a much nicer arrow when all is said and done with a premium grade arrow. So here's another really good example. If you can see it, I'm not sure, but you can see all the runoff here. It runs off significantly on this particular arrow in a couple different places. And there's another great example. You can see how the grain runs clear off this arrow. It's actually not a terrible arrow. You can see some really tight green here, but it's not a good arrow by any stretch of the imagination. I don't have a premium one here. This one's kind of nice though. You can see there's not much grain here. That makes for a better arrow, of course. There's still runoff regardless. But I will be able to create a decent arrow with that one right there. You can see that spine runs from end to end, and that's what makes a good quality arrow. There is some theory also about building an arrow where the runoff is kind of pointing away from you. I don't know. I've never had an issue where an arrow was shot and it breaks upon shot. But there's theory that it will break where the runoff is, and you should have it pointing up. And what that does is if it breaks when you shoot it, it won't stab your hand. I think that's kind of an old wives' tale. I've never have seen that. I've never had that personal experience. But this is what we're doing. So when I put this on here, I'm going to do one that you can kind of see what I'm doing. And then the rest I will just kind of do on my own, speed through it. And again, I have my pencil. I'm going to write down the exact spine on every single arrow shaft I weigh. And then I will, again, categorize them and then put that in a batch. Okay, so again, here's the arrow scale. I put it on there, and you can see the grain is at me. I don't want that. I want the grain up because that's how the tension is going to build on this. So I put the weighted end, I put one side of the arrow on there. You could see it's the flat grain portion. And then this little guy right here is a dial. When I dial this, you will see that arrow, this point, move down, and it's going to where it says set. I'm not sure if you can see that or not. I'll zoom in-ish. You can see where it says set right there. And I just get down and I see that in line. It might not look in line from the camera view, but it's in line right here. I can probably bring it down a hair. And then what you do, I have a brass weight. This is very accurate. And then what I'm going to do is hang it on the distal end, this end here. I'm going to hang it here, and it's going to go up to a particular number. And you can see that that is hanging right at about 40. When I look at it from my perspective, it is exactly 40. So that's a 40 right there, right? So this is part of the batch. I'm going to take it, and again, I'm just going to go right to the end and write 40. That's a 40. And I'm going to do this whole batch. I have 2 dozen in front of me. I'm going to sit here and do it, and then we're going to categorize them. So I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to do this, and then I'll speed this whole thing up, and we'll take it from there. Okay, guys, so we're back at it. I just put every arrow 24 on the spine scale. You watched me do that. And now we're back to the data. So again, the data for these were their 35-40 shafts, meaning in that each 12 pack, there will be a range of 35 or 40 spine. Put them all on everyone on the spine scale. Again, I do it in order of how I weigh them, spine them first, and you can see according to the chart, 38 through 42 was the heaviest one. So we had a 35, of course, that's the lightest spine, and we had an outlier. We had one at 42, and we had 3 at 41. So we're slightly outside spec. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, but you can see I've categorized them from, again, lightest spine to heaviest spine. That's a deviation of 7. I don't really like to be outside of 5 if I can avoid it. Ideally, I want to be within 3, but you can see I have a great, a great selection here of very similar spine. Right in this 38, 39, and 40 spine, I have 15 arrows right there within 3. And then if I go to the 37 spine I have here, I add another 4. So this is a huge selection I have right here. So this sample group will probably be one I use. I'm not going to discard anything. When I make my arrows, once they're stained and everything, I literally will write numbers on them, exact spine they are. So I know when I'm shooting it, I know if one flies a little better than another, what that spine is, and then I'll actually try to get as close to that spine. I just circled that just for whatever reason. But if 37s are flying better than 39s, if this sample group of 37s is flying better than the 39s, then I know maybe that when I order premiums, I want to order 37s. Or I only have one 35. It's not our only 35. I have other arrows, of course. I can find another sample group. But you can see this sample group I have, I'm going to use, or take advantage of. I'm going to make all of these arrows, of course, even this weird 42 outlier, the 41. I mean, so there's 4 arrows outside of what they said it was going to be. Again, we're splitting hairs here. It's fairly irrelevant. I'm happy, though, that I have this good sample batch in the 37 to 40 range, very tight. And my guess is, again, I have everything written down on the arrows. I can actually see how those sit according to the weight charts too. Now I have a hierarchy of what I want out of any arrow, any arrow, whether it's wood, aluminum, carbon. And that hierarchy is, first and foremost, I want a consistent spine. I've done a live test with a much nicer spine tester that I have, where I took brand new arrows of Easton, Gold Tip, Carbon Express, Victory, and I pulled them out and showed you how um, there what it says on the package as a particular spine is not often what is in there. So when you roll an arrow around its circumference, you will see how spines change. And I've mentioned this on podcasts and to other people. The reason I love aluminum is because around its entire circumference, that spine is pretty much identical all the way around. Now, when you go put a wood arrow on there, again, you can see how there's runoff on here and where the grain is tight. Now, the grain this way is going to have a different weight than if I were to weigh it this way. It's just because of the way the grain runs. And then carbon are woven, and the weave sometimes has a stiff spot. It's not all the time, but it is often enough where I don't shoot carbon hardly at all. I'd rather shoot aluminum inside and the aluminum carbon composite outside, like an X10. The whole different story and a different video for another time. But the point I was trying to make with this video was, do the numbers coincide? Yes, they're rather close. Again, the only thing I'd change, if I were personally labeling these, again, these are 320, 330 labeled, both packages, and we have plenty more to do this with. But I would really label these in the 315 to 325 range. It was much better would have been much better stated there. And then according to the spine that we weighed, yes, these are the majority of them are 35 to 40s, which is what it's labeled. We did have 341s and 142. Again, splitting hairs, not that big of a deal, but it's not exactly accurate either. So you can see out of 24 arrows, 3 of them were outside of that range, and we didn't deviate to the lower side of 35. So fairly accurate, not perfect, but again, a hunter shaft, that could have been a labeling issue too. I don't know. I don't care. It's not super relevant. This is a test kit. We're going to use these as a test kit to hopefully, again, make a better arrow than what we had here, which was, like I said, a 565 grain arrow. I'm hoping to get something in the 300 range here for her. That would be a better fit for indoor target. Okay, we're going to cut the video here. I'm going to stop it for a second. I want to keep these as short as I can so people tend to stay engaged with what I'm doing. Making arrows is kind of a process, so these videos will tend to run on the longer side. I will try to keep my talking to a minimum. But people want to know, people want to learn. And so I will do it in my next video, which I'll put out in a few days or so. We'll be taking these and straightening them because wood is rarely straight. And then I will straighten them, and then we'll put tapers on them, and then do a stain, and then a seal, and then a fletch. We won't necessarily, maybe I'll just kind of do a time-lapse video when it comes to staining and sealing, because that takes forever. It's literally watching paint dry. It's painful. So I probably won't make a video. Maybe I'll do a quick video, a segment in the rest of the other videos. And then we'll get to shooting them, which is the whole point of this video, is to narrow down and try to find a better flying arrow where Julie will be able to aim, or you, like, this is for you too. I'm hoping you use this information. Will be hopefully aim closer to the middle versus way up high, or if you're a stacker or a gapper where you're aiming way down low, like in my case, way down here to hit here. I want to be as close to that yellow as I possibly can. So I hope you enjoyed this first portion. If you have any comments, of course, leave them in the comments section. People that leave negative comments and stupid comments, I erase them. I might answer some of them, but then I block you. I block you from the channel. So don't go there. There's no reason for it. It's kind of silly for some of these negative comments I get. If you don't like what you see, you don't have to be here. Just move on. Of course, please like and subscribe, guys. Like and subscribe. The more subscriptions I get, the more stuff I'll put out. If people aren't subscribing, I'm going to assume they're not interested. A little statistic I found in the data that I can get from YouTube is that most people that watch the videos are not subscribers. Most people, like most, if we get 3,000 views, I only have 1,000 subscribers. There's a big gap there. So please subscribe, please like, please subscribe, please share with others that might like these videos. And again, the more of those I get, the more videos I'll put out for everyone. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll end it here. And of course, we're going to make these look good, but for you and your shooting, please always make it look good. And we'll see you soon.